If Ken joins, I'll let you know.
Sure.
We're recording. You're good.
Okay, great. Okay. Good evening. This is the November 17th, 2020 regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission of New Canaan, Connecticut. Lynn Abney, the town planner, will be running the Zoom call. Why don't we do, we'll start with the roll call. John Goodwin, I am here. Mrs. Grislecki? Mrs. Grislecki?
Okay, you can't hear me?
Now we do.
No, now we can.
Okay, here.
Okay. Mr. Turner, are you here? I think not, but
No.
okay. Mr. Radman?
Here.
Mr. Ward?
Here.
Mr. Scornia?
Here.
Mr. Flynn?
Yeah.
Mr. Chris?
Here.
Okay, Mr. Williams is not attending. Ms. Nielsen?
Here.
Mr. Cassavant?
Here.
Okay, great. Mrs. Nielsen, you are seated for Mr. Williams, and Mr. Cassavant, you are seated for Mr. Turner. Let's get going with the public hearing. Item number 182 West Road. Upon application, David Rucci, Lambertui Rucci, authorized agent for James and Elizabeth Baird for special permit approval of sections 34C3 and 34C7 to allow the renovation and conversion of the existing historic barn in excess of 1,000 square feet from storage and vehicle use to a residential accessory use with a three-car garage for property located in the 2-acre zone at 182 West Road. Mr. Rucci.
Yeah, hi, good evening, David Rucci. I'm here this evening also with the Scatinos, Jim and James Scatino, who are the architects on the project. You all may recall this particular application came before some of you back in 2016. It was for the making this particular barn a historic structure. This particular piece of property has an oversized barn on it already. It takes up about 50% of the allowable coverage of the property in and of itself. And what we did back in 2016, just to refresh your memory, is that we essentially asked that the commission designate the two-story barn historic structure to allow us to put a small addition on the main residence of about 544 square feet. So at that particular time, we're, I don't know, over 1,000 square feet, 1,500 square feet over coverage at the time. In order to add the additional 534 square feet and not take down the barn, this commission, at our request and our application 2016, allowed for the barn to become historic. At the time, the barn's essentially a storage for the property. While that has provided some use to the applicant, in and of itself, the barn is mainly unused. And their application today is to convert the use from storage to a three-car garage. The main resident doesn't have a garage on it now, to a three-car garage and a residence, basically an accessory guest cottage on the property. Right now, the particular I'll let, when we get to the architectural part of it, I'll let the Scatinos talk about that. But you can see on this survey that you're looking at now, the striped sections or the hatched areas are the ones that are being removed. And there's a small proposed addition on the back that just sort of bangs out the back of this particular property barn. The sections that are being removed, if you could go in please to number 4 of what I said.
To go to drawing 4, I'll get it for you.
Yes, please. I just want to show you, actually, Lynn, can you go to 7 first? I think that might be the easiest thing to show.
7 in
Yeah,
the
I think
architectural drawings?
No, just in the email that I sent with the exhibits for the hearing.
Oh, they're all up. Everything is up. But they're up as do you want I have them as do you want the architectural, or because we
Just
labeled them based on how people would find them?
They're just pictures.
Oh, the pictures. Okay.
Yes, and it's
Okay.
it's listed as number 7.
Okay. Give me a second. I'll get it.
Sure. I just want to show the commission essentially what the building looks like today. And then I'll go through what our proposal is and then what we're essentially taking off this particular building. It's important to note that the areas that we are taking off the building are not seen from the street. You can't really see these particular ones. So here, if you see the existing barn, the front of it, that's essentially what is remaining, or a large part of it's remaining. There is a small area on the back side of the barn, about 12 feet to be removed on that section. And then you can see on the bottom, what we're proposing to do. We're going to be using, all the same windows that we can, all the same refurbishing of the sides. We're going to be keeping the doors off to the left there from the other doors. We're going to keep the windows, the color. And essentially what we're trying to do is modernize it enough so that it can be used on the property for something other than storage. If you can go back up to the pictures now, 4 and 5, please.
Okay. Here's pictures 4, and I'll
Okay.
get you 5 after you're done.
That's fine. So this is the areas in the rear of the barn that are being removed. And these are also areas that you cannot see from the road or from West Road. I mean, the barn sits behind the property in and as it is. And I think one of the important things to note is that, one of the reasons we want to try to save these barns in general is because of the way it fits into the landscape, it fits into the other areas of West Road. People can enjoy it when they see it. These particular two pieces are not necessarily something that anyone can see. And in fact, they're sort of the most dilapidated part of this particular oversized barn. One of them is used to basically cover up a root cellar. It has an area where they used to milk milking stalls in there. So while they serve some historic significance, it's really nothing else to use these particular areas for. So those are being removed, and essentially one of the reasons we're removing it is because they're not really usable for the renovation of the barn. But the second part of it is that we are trying to bring the barn a little bit more into conformance as far as our coverage goes. So we're going to be bringing this down to only about 300 square feet over coverage now, compared to before when it was about 1,500 for coverage. So from a planning perspective, the building more conforming, or the property more conforming, we're going to be at about 7,330 square feet, and the allowable building coverage is 7,057 square feet. Today it's 8,200. So we're basically bringing it down to that. Just going through the special permit criteria. Obviously, we're not changing anything as far as the location of the barn, so we're not moving anything, so its location, its use, its size are all things that are not changing other than getting smaller. We've also taken out the parts that are dilapidated and they're not really being able to be used as far as the barn goes. We're going to be reusing a lot of the barn. This is the area that goes over the root cellar that I was talking about before. Nothing's going to change as far as the access goes to this barn. It's still going to be used. The property itself is a single family dwelling, and we believe it's consistent with the plan of conservation development, still utilizing and keeping and saving this particular barn. It's going to provide some additional housing to this piece of property, a garage to this piece of property. We're going to be bringing it in so that nowadays people won't be taking this down based on the fact that it's got some usable area to it. They have much more on that. Yes.
And do we have everybody muted, particularly someone who's driving in a car? Okay, I think.
Everyone should be muted.
No, the person I think just muted. Go ahead, Mr. Rucci.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I didn't really have much more to add. I just think it's important to note that, with all these types of barns and modern houses and the like, what we're trying to do is make sure people try to keep them. But I think in order to do that, we also have to make them functional as of today. So for instance, this particular house doesn't have any garages in it now, so at least we'll be able to use the cars for garage. Yes, we'll be able to provide a little bit of additional housing. They're not necessarily talking about renting it out, but they're going to make it a space that someone else can utilize and use as part of their families, from what I understand today. So I didn't really have much more to offer. I mean, we are all also bringing down the nonconformity of the property, which is also an important planning course of conduct for planning and this particular lot. I do have the Scatinos here if you wanted to talk about anything specific as to why they decided to do a certain thing or not. And I can just say as a global comment, I mean, we certainly could have left everything and still did the renovation. But these areas that we're taking off are really being taken off because they're so dilapidated and there's really not much to use them for, which is a little contrary to trying to save the barn. But these sections of the barn were sort of sheds that were added on at a later date. It's not the main part of the barn that I showed in that first picture. So I'm willing, I can answer any other questions that you may have, or if you want to hear from James or Jim Scatino, I know they're on the line and they can speak to the architecture itself. But we're really talking about a use issue in this particular case, I think, than an architecture one.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rucci. Commissioners' questions either for Mr. Rucci or Mr. Scatino?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Rucci, how big is the dwelling unit going to be? Like, how many bedrooms, bathrooms? Is there going to be a kitchenette?
Just remember to state your name, please.
Sorry, Claire. Yeah.
So it's a 2 bedrooms. It has 2.5 baths. And I did forget to mention that there is a new septic system that's been approved and should be a part of your packet for the property. So everything's sort of self-serving as far as that particular property goes, as far as the septic, the electricity, water, all that's being supplied to it. And then it's got this 3-car garage.
Great. Thank you.
And this is Jack Flynn. And this is for family and friends, is that right? Of course.
Yes.
This is not to be leased, rented.
Not as of today. I don't think there's any intention of doing that. The cars they're using themselves, they don't have a garage on their property now. But I haven't spoken to them directly about what they're going to be, whether they're going to be renting it out or anything. My understanding is they have taken in one of their parents at this time into their main residence. I don't know though whether or not they're moving she to this unit or not. I'm sorry, to the barn or not.
Would they be willing to stipulate that this is not for rent, not going to be renting this out?
I don't really have the answer to that question. I never actually I never talked to them about that. I don't know if the Scatinos may know the answer to that question. I don't know if Jim or James can answer that.
Jim Scatino here. Repeat the question again, David, please.
The question is whether or not they're planning on doing any sort of renting out this particular.
No,
barn.
that's never been in the discussion at all. It was for their own family use, to my knowledge.
So I guess, and to your question, Mr. Flynn, I don't know if I can say for sure whether or not they'd be willing to accept a condition on no rentals. I do think that in general, it's a big piece of property and it's got a big unit there. I mean, I would rather not limit that just because I don't know the answer, but obviously, that's within your purview to do that.
Okay, well, I do think that this is a better, higher, if you will, use for the barn, and that will, I would think, will contribute to it's being preserved. It's better use, a higher use. It'll in fact, be used. It looks like a reasonable proposition to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's John Kriz. Looking at the drawings, it says bar on the ground floor. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that term.
Jim Scatino, can you hear me? I'm here.
I can hear you.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's just the barn, a bar for, I'm looking at the plan here, just for entertainment use off of the barn room. It has have refrigeration and beverages and a sink in there.
Yeah, I'm wondering, is the application then for this to be a legal accessory dwelling?
I would say so. David, you can weigh in on that, but
Well, we are changing the use to bedrooms and, basically a detached accessory structure. So, but we're really just changing the use because we're not rebuilding the structure in and of itself. So it's really an issue of use, and the use is, as we said in our application, for not only garages, but for car storage, but also for 2 bedrooms and bathrooms. We have a separate septic system as well. So yes, in the end, I mean, it's certainly another dwelling unit.
yeah, I mean,
It would seem then that this would, if it is approved, would be could be a rental property if some owner wants it to be a rental property. And we talked about this at our subcommittee meeting just prior to our full commission meeting. And so regardless of what the views of the current owners may be, those views can change, and the new owner of this property could take a different view and make this just a rental property if he or she decided to do so.
Yes, that's true. I mean, these people don't have the, at least the Scatinos, they're not planning on doing that right now. But yes, once it's up and in, it can certainly be used as a rental unit at a later date, unless the commission puts a condition on it that it can't. But I've felt that over the last 10 to 15 years, the commission's been moving more towards, allowing accessory dwelling units and in-law suites. And that's been sort of the way they've been moving towards these larger lots and the use of these buildings, not the opposite of, kind of holding back on rentals, which is the way it used to be 20 years ago or so. There was a real backlash against trying to put any sort of accessory dwelling units in. I think Ms. Grzelewski was, kind of champion bringing in more in-law suites and units and detached housing.
Also, if you could go back to the photograph of the current building.
Sure, that's number 7. Or do you want the proposed and the? Or 6.
Is that the one you were looking for?
No, it was another photograph of the side of the piece in the back that was going to be taken off. There's another photograph.
That's going to be 4 or 5.
That's what you're
Yeah,
looking
there
for,
we are.
John?
Yes, that's it. Thank you. The lower picture, I'm looking at, there was some pool equipment you have there, as well as some electrical on the side of the building. Since you're going to be expanding there, I'm wondering what's going to happen to all that
yeah.
electrical, mechanical stuff.
Yeah, I can answer that. Can you hear me? It's Jim.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, that's all, because if you look at the proposed drawing on that east side, there'll be a new stone fireplace there and French doors. So all that pool equipment and any mechanical will be relocated in another location within the setbacks, obviously. So that has to be relocated.
And the construction materials for the addition, I assume it's going to be wood.
Yeah, there's actually the current has barn siding. It's pine. It's been painted. We were going to reclaim some of it and then try to install new boards where necessary, but try to keep the same width of the pine, et cetera, and any patching we have to do.
The idea is that it would be a sympathetic development to the 1700 barn as far as building materials and style.
Totally, we're very respectful to this building. We're actually doing putting together an antique barn in Darien. The windows will all be 2/2 double hungs to match the Victorian windows that were added later in this barn. They all have a little pedimented head on them. We're keeping the cupola. We're actually putting glass in it. So all the details, the window heads, the proportions are all very respectful. And my son James is here. If you want to jump in, James, or any other comments on the architectural, you may, but I think that's basically it. From the road, that, as David may have mentioned, the barn will never change from the road because none of these removal areas would be visual when you approach the property. So we've been very respectful to the building. It's got a lot of history. That barn goes from, actually, the part we're preserving is in the circa 1725 on the western side. And then it's actually, I think, 3 additions. The middle, I think, was 1880, and then the one to the farthest east side was 1890. And that was I think, the barn for the house to the west over there on Greenlee, and it had like 90 acres to it. It's got quite a history to that barn. It is a large barn, and I think it was added on at least 3 times, maybe 5 times. So again, we've done these barns before, and we're trying to be very respectful to the architecture and to the history of it, to preserve it. And I think the new use would really help in preserving the architecture of the barn.
So, Mr.
Just finally, the chimney you're putting in for the fireplace, it's going to be skinned and natural stone?
That's correct. Have to get that elevation. There's stone actually on the foundation. We would probably play on that a little bit. It's not so visible in some of these drawings, but we would use local field stone to match. Yes, that's on the left elevation on the architectural drawings.
Lynn, can you just move back to the 6th photo?
Sure, give me a second to get it.
Thank you.
That's the one you're looking for?
Yes, just so they can see the.
Okay.
So this is Art Cassavant. I have several questions for Mr. Scatino or Mr. Scatino Jr. First, I assume that this, and I'll just ask my questions and you could deal with them in whatever order. I presume that this is a post and beam structure. I assume that it's sitting on an original foundation. I presume that you will not be building a new foundation, or will you be? And what is the square footage of the residential area ex garage?
Okay, good question. I think I can answer the square footage first. It's about 4,000 feet of the first and second floor area minus the garage. I think that's pretty close, 4,070 feet. The second question is another important question. We've had our PE out there, David Seymour, a couple of times, and we want to preserve the stone foundation. Some areas are good, some are going to be removed and underpinned. It's going to be in selective areas. The front, and correct me, James, if I got this correct, I think the front was in pretty good shape. There's some areas that will be underpinned and patched. It's a case-by-case situation. Of course, on the on the left side where we're putting the fireplace, that would probably, and there's new doors there, we'd probably underpin that whole side. But again, it's a big part of the structure. Some of the eaves are straight and some on the oldest section on that 1700 to the right of the top photo would be, we have to shore up those eaves a little bit. You can see they're a little bit sagged in the middle. But the barn, phase one, if this was approved, we would be doing kind of restructuring the building before we did any construction. We would be reconstructing the foundation and the and any of the timbers. But it is a post and beam structure. They're 8x8. I think they're pine. It's a very solid thing. Also, in your drawing on the what we call the barn room, when we remove that floor above, we were going to see a beautiful beamed rafter ceiling. So it'll be a magnificent room in there when we remove the first floor ceiling or second floor, whatever you want to call it. And then we would expose that big loft space in there with a collar ties. And there's a lot of beautiful antique architecture in there, which we want to preserve.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, Lynn, let's open this up to the public. Would anyone from the public like to address this application, please?
I don't actually think we have anyone from the public. We'll let Rob Hughes or I don't think Todd Ritchie, you're not here for this? No. I don't think we have any members of the public actually on the meeting. Robert Cardello?
Am I okay to go, Lynn?
I have a final
I'm here
question.
for the second application, Robert
Okay.
Cardello.
Okay. Mr. Chris?
Is there a landscaping plan for this?
No, we're going to be using, I mean, the landscaping that's already in there right now is pretty dense to begin with. So we're not really, other than removing these sections, the lot itself is, I'm sorry, the barn itself is pretty well screened from neighboring properties. The only part that you really can see is from West Road when you're coming down West Road, and that's that front part of the barns.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Last call for commissioners?
This is Dan. I may have missed the earlier in the presentation, but does this barn have its own septic system or is it tied into the house's septic system?
Hi, Dan. Dave, do you want to take it or? Yeah.
Sure. We have a new septic system that's been approved for this barn.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Okay, this application's closed.
Thank you.
Item number 2, 22 Ranhorn Road. Upon application, Robert Chofie and Megan Walsh, owners for special permit, site plan approval of sections 34C6, 34C7, and A2B to allow detached pool house and pool patio on a corner lot exceeding 1,000 square feet of coverage within 150 feet of street, conforming to required setbacks for property in the 2-acre zone at 22 Ranhorn Road. Who's here to present, please?
Good evening, commission members. My name is Robert Cardello of Robert Cardello Architects. I'm here to represent the owners, Rob and Megan Chofie, who are on with us this evening. Also joining me is my colleague, Deandra Musial, the landscape designer, Rob Hughes of Stonebridge Associates, civil engineer, Todd Ritchie of Malone and McBroom, and that's it. So I'd like to start by just telling you a little bit about the project, if I could.
Please proceed.
I'm going to bring up the survey or any specific drawings as you talk.
The survey would be great.
Okay. You can start.
So We had the pleasure of working with Rob and Megan back in 2005 to design the main house here. And we've done a few things around the house. Most recently, they've asked us to come up with this design for a pool house and a pool. This specific location that we've decided to place this pool and pool house was strategic for a couple of reasons, several of which are mature trees on the property that we didn't want to have affected by the location of these two pieces. And there's relatively significant drainage in the backyard that we wanted to avoid as well. The structure itself, well, let me start off with the numbers. The existing building coverage is 4,075 square feet. The allowable building coverage is 5,539 square feet. And the proposed building coverage is 5,475 square feet. So the total additional coverage proposed is 1,400 square feet. The pool house has about 1,000 square feet, just under 1,000 square feet of heated space in it, indoor space, and about 400 square feet of covered outdoor space. We're here tonight to ask for a special permit under section 3.4-C7 with a pool house exceeding the allowable accessory structure and of 1,000 square feet. And we are also asking for a special permit for section 3.4-C6, which is the accessory structure in the front yard. The closest point from West Hills Road to the existing house is 70.6 feet. The closest point from the property line to the pool is 66 feet. The pool house will be behind the pool itself. And Lynn, if you'd be kind enough to scroll down a little bit, you might, yeah, this I think demonstrates it pretty clearly, where you see that red line, which is the line that's represents 70.6 feet. And you can see how it just nips the pool there, and the pool house itself clears that. I'd like to mention that there's no cooking facilities in the structure. The building conforms to building height, and I would love to give our civil engineer an opportunity to tell you a little bit about what he's done on this property to facilitate the drainage and the septic. And then maybe we could take some questions.
Please proceed.
Sure. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, thank you. For the record, my name is Todd Ritchie. I'm a professional engineer with Mylon and McBroom. I guess we could put up the site plan.
Give me a second, but you can start talking.
Okay, thank you. So just a little background, I had previously worked on this property back in '05, as Bob had mentioned, as part of the original the redevelopment of the property into the 6-bedroom house that's on the property now. We did the design of the site and the septic and the drainage. And so I'm familiar with the property. There's been some things that have been updated over time, but that I wasn't part of, but originally I was part of the team. And this is the site plan that we put together associated with the pool and the pool house. Just a little background on how the drainage flows on the site, the drainage patterns on the site. There's essentially the drainage flows to the east and to the west, and there's sort of a bowl in the back where the couple of trees there are in the center, and part of the pool and the pool house is within that area as well. Currently that drains and infiltrates into the ground through a stormwater infiltration system. And then if it gets exceeds that, there's natural pathways towards the rear of the property. And then there's also a pump chamber at the walkout of the rear of the house that pumps water away from the house. So for this proposal, we have to relocate part of the septic system because it will be within 50 feet of the septic system, the proposed pool house. The pool itself has to be 25 feet from the septic, and since the pool house will have a lower foundation and foundation drainage, it has to be 50 feet away from any component of the septic system. So we're essentially just keeping half of the system, the northern half, in place as it is, and then over time, just the health code from back in 05 to today has actually gotten a little bit more lenient because there was a lot of conservatism built in for larger homes that didn't necessarily wasn't needed, because not all of these houses that are over 4 bedrooms are fully utilized as much as a 3-bedroom house would be. So with that, we're proposing a replacement of a single row instead of 2 rows that we're taking out, and that meets the health code requirements. We've gone out and done additional test holes in the area that we're proposing to put in the septic, and we've submitted to the health department, and we received a couple of comments, and only 2 comments actually. One was that this will actually be since this proposed pool house will be connected to the existing septic as what they call a central system. They'd like to see, instead of a separate septic tank and pump chamber, they want to see an ejector pump from the basement of the pool house going to the existing septic tank. They like to minimize maintenance as much as possible for these systems, and having a redundant exterior septic tank and pump chamber they feel would be extra maintenance that's not necessary. And then the other comment was just we had a inspection company do an inspection of the existing system, and the system is working well and fine. But they wanted some more information on some of the features or condition of the tanks, which wasn't documented at the time. So those were the only 2 comments that the health department had, and we expect to resolve those issues and receive approval from them. As far as drainage goes, we have to account for the runoff from the proposed roofs and patio areas. The swimming pool we've designed, or will be designed, with a high enough, I guess you would say, curb around the water surface area so that it will actually retain the amount of water that's required for the 25-year storm within the pool itself. And then any of the runoff from the roofs and the patio will go into underground infiltration systems. And since, as I mentioned, this area is a sort of like a self-contained drainage area, anything that overflows in this area will actually enter into a pump chamber here next to the building, which will also receive the sump pump drainage, and it will be discharged up in the front lawn area to allow an overflow across the lawn so it can infiltrate naturally into the lawn before it actually comes out onto the driveway and would actually come out into the street. So it won't be discharged from this area, will not be directed to any other properties, and naturally and eventually water does run off this property into the street. We put in erosion. The proposed construction access would be off of West Hills Road. This is a reasonable location and logical in the sense that it's a direct access off of the road. They'll have to relocate some existing screening plantings here, and I'm sure they'll be replanting those, and they'll be discussed shortly, and temporarily have this access directly to the work area here. And then we'll have silt fence, erosion controls, and anti-track pad here for the trucks entering and exiting the property. I think I pretty much covered as much as I can off of the site plan. If anybody has any questions.
This is John Kriz. Any wetlands on the property?
No, we're not aware of any wetlands on the property, and there wasn't any that were picked up by the surveyor as they were out there. But if there's, we didn't, at this point, the surveyor didn't have anybody go out there to specifically look. So we'd be open to the town staff going out and taking a look and letting us know if they suspect that there's any out there.
Okay, Mr. Cardell, why don't we finish up your team's presentation, then we'll open it up to, unless you're already done, we'll then open it up to questions with the commissioners.
Rob Hughes, the landscape designer. Rob, do you have anything to present as far as screening that you're proposing or plantings around the structure and pool on West Hills?
I did submit that initial drawing, and if they have that there, then that would be great. But there is a buffer existing there now, and we would be adding more to it in the close proximity to the pool side of the pool house to screen it from West Hills. So this area down here was actually recently added, so that will do a good job of screening it, augmenting what's already there on that side of the property. There's quite a few large evergreens all along this side. This is where the double gate is now, where the anti-tracking pad and construction access would be. So there are current evergreens there, which again, we can add to as we work our way out of the site. But there's sufficient evergreen coverage there already.
Thank you. And Lynn, you all have your packets, I'm sure. There's some photographs of the rear yard that'll show you some of the landscape that's there now with the mature trees and plantings. I thank you to the board for listening to our presentation, and we look forward to hearing your comments.
Okay, commissioners, questions for the applicant, please.
Jack Flynn, what is the size of the pool house, please?
That's under 1,000 square feet of heated space and about 400 square feet of covered outdoor space.
And how is the pool house partitioned? What is inside it?
It's a golf simulator, primarily a full bathroom and a small sitting area with a bar, kitchenette, not a full kitchen. As I mentioned, there's no cooking facilities, under counter fridge, those details.
Could I ask a question, is Art Cassavant, about the septic in the original structure? So I'm assuming if the home was built in 2005 or thereabouts, that the septic was new then? And part two of that question is, normally there would be a need to designate a replacement zone in the case that the septic galleries or the tank itself needed to be replaced. Where would the replacement septic go, to the extent that I don't see anything designated on the chart?
Sure, if we could bring up the septic plan again.
Sure. Give me a second.
Sure. So to answer your first question, yes, back in 2005, the septic system was brand new. And your question about the replacement or reserve area, that's actually only under the health code required for when you have a new lot, because when you're first building the lot before there's any development, there's a potential for the area of the septic system that's proposed to perhaps be impacted or damaged by the development of the equipment or other entities working on the site, so that if that happened, you wouldn't want, in that case, to have a site that didn't have the ability to support a septic system and the impact that would have on obviously the value and the usability of the site. When you already have a septic system approved and installed, that reserve area requirement actually goes away under the health code, because the replacement area for a code complying system can be in the exact same place as the existing system. Or in this case, as I mentioned, the code was different in 05 than it is today. So it's a current code required system. So this design that you see here meets the current code as of today. And if there was ever a failure of the system, another system, and most failures occur because of not because of the underlying hydraulics of the system, because that's very conservative nowadays. It's because of issues with premature clogging. And when you have premature clogging, it's actually just going in and replacing a system to eliminate the clogging factor, and then putting in a new system that doesn't have that. It's fresh and new.
So you referred earlier to the testing or the desire to test. Was there a particular reason that there was additional testing done on this system that's 15 years old?
There was, because originally, as you see, the alignment of the system was basically north to south. And in this case, in order to keep the separation, maintain that separation that's required by the health code to the proposed structure, we actually had to bend the row towards the west. And you have to keep and also parallel with the ground contours when you're designing septic systems. So in this case, we rotated that row towards the west. And as we did that, we needed to account for document what the soils were in that area, which were not documented before in that area.
So just to paraphrase what you just said, the need for the additional engineering testing was because of the addition rather than because of some existing problem.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Anybody else?
John Cruz.
Go ahead,
I had a
John.
question on the landscape plan. I don't see a list of any new plants being intended for this area, as well as a common name, Latin name, so forth. It just says concept. I'm not sure what you're planning here.
That is true. There's some abbreviations and some designations of plants there, but they are, you're right, not listed out with Latin or common, but that's an obvious addendum we can make as necessary.
What are you planning?
Well, there are quite a few, as far as the evergreens that are out there, there's quite a few existing hemlocks, so we would be adding some hemlock to that. There's also quite a bit of rhododendron, we would add that. Some viburnum, which are a nice naturalistic, shade tolerant, large growing shrub, fruits, berries, things like that for the birds. Clethra, a couple different varieties of hydrangea. So just those are the general plants. Again, they can be listed out easily enough.
Are these all native to our area? The plants you intend to put in?
Majority are native. I don't think they're all native, but it's not a wetlands remediation plan, or we weren't trying for a naturalistic garden as much as screening, buffer, some natural planting to have a natural feel and go in with the existing woodland planting that's buffering the pool and pool house from the road. But we weren't going for completely natural or native.
Well, our POCD encourages native plantings, particularly ones that are pollinator and bird friendly.
They're definitely pollinators, bird friendly. As I mentioned, several of them have flowers that are pollinators and as well as fruit for the birds.
I would just find the application more complete if there were details on what's being intended, so that we can fully evaluate what the plans are for the landscaping, which I'm not getting from the concept plan.
Okay, well, we can certainly adjust that as needed. It's more decorative planting around the pool house, which faces the main property, and it's more evergreen and thick buffering planting along the West Hills side of the property.
Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioners?
Yeah, Dick Ward. Is the pool house building, is it going to be insulated in any way so that it's winterized, usable?
Yes, yeah, they will be using it in the winter months to use that golf simulator.
The golf simulator. Is there a capability of a bedroom?
It's one open space. If you look at the plan, the bathroom isn't contiguous with, even if you took the golf simulator room, which is, I suppose you could argue it's at a different level than the rest of the pool house. So you actually step down into it because you need that extra ceiling height. So the plan, it just, you could look at it and know that it doesn't facilitate a bedroom, really. I mean, I suppose you could put a wall up there, but you're going down 3 feet into the space that would be the golf simulator. And then the access to the bathroom is not in an obvious place. It's the intention is not to have it be a dwelling unit of any kind.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioners? Okay, Lynn, let's open this up to the public. Would anyone from the public like to address this application, please?
I don't believe we have anyone from the public. We just have the next applicant.
Okay,
And,
great. Okay, commissioners.
And we have the media, that's it.
Pardon me? Okay. Commissioners, we're all set, right?
Yes.
Okay, this application's closed.
Very much.
Okay, item number 3, let's make some decisions. Since it's fresh in our mind, let's start with 22 Ramhorn Road. Commissioners, do I have a motion for approval or denial of this application?
I move we approve it. It's Claire Tiscornia.
There are reasons for approval, please.
It seems like it fits in with their yard. I don't think it's going to be imposing on the neighbors at all. It seems like a kind of a simple pool house. The only condition I would add for John Chris is to have an addendum placed on it with a list of landscaping, what plantings are planned to be planted for this project. But other than that, I think it's just a pool and a pool house. And as long as it seems like their drainage plan is very extensive. Seems like the professional engineer has done a good job. So I move for approval.
Great. Do I have a second of the motion?
Second. Dan
Okay,
Radman.
I heard Gene. Okay, further discussion of the motion. John?
Regarding John Chris, regarding the planting plan, I would just suggest that that Lynn review it and note that any plants that are going to be installed would be native to our area.
Claire, is that acceptable to you as moving the motion?
Yes.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Okay, the one thing I would add is I'm sure many of you did the drive-by and the current screening, even though pretty much leaves are all down, is pretty intense. So whatever the additions are will be a plus to the project and to the screening. Okay, I'm going to call the motion. John Goodwin, I vote yes. Mrs. Grozlecki?
Yes.
Mr. Radman?
Yes.
Mr. Ward?
Yes.
Mr. Scornia?
Yes.
Mr. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Chris?
Yes.
Ms. Nielsen?
Yes.
Mr. Cassavant?
Yes.
Okay, great. Motion, application's approved unanimously. Okay, 182 West Road. Do I have a motion for approval or denial?
I move that we approve. I think that it is as I said earlier, I think it's a higher and better use for the property, and I think that will contribute to preserving an historic structure. And finally, I would like them to stipulate that it's not going to be used for rental.
Jack, say that one more time. What would you like them to do?
I would like them to stipulate that it's not going to be used for rental.
Okay. Okay, so you want a condition that it not be rented?
Yes.
Okay. I guess there is some question of the ability to enforce that. But do I have a second?
I'll second it. It's Art Cassavant.
Okay. Discussion of the motion.
If it's an affordable housing unit, I don't see how we can keep it from being rented.
It's not affordable housing.
I'm sorry, I mean, it's,
Accessory, an ADU.
Oh, accessory.
Yeah.
yes, sir, I'm sorry. I
If
mean,
it's an accessory, legal accessory dwelling, it can be rented at will. We'll have no control over it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lynn, have we had, since you've been here, have you had any issues with any of these rent things that have become rentals? Most of them are family. There's no question about that. Generally speaking, it's mother, father, you know, kid home from school or whatever. But there are a few.
We haven't had any problems, but I mean, the problems would be identified when we get complaints from the neighbors, and we haven't generally received complaints on these types of properties.
Would an alternative be the following, which is done in many places, which is that you allow for the accessory unit, but upon the sale or transfer of the property, that goes away? Because while I trust entirely that the applicant here is in good faith, making a great use of a barn and preserving a piece of property, you would hate to have this sold and broken into a separate property at some further time.
So Art, how would you phrase that condition?
That in fact, the accessory unit, including the dwelling, be created and allowed, but that accessory dwelling would cease to exist upon transfer of the property.
Is that doable?
Yeah, how could you do that?
Yeah, how do you do that?
Well, it's interesting
Or reveal my ignorance asking the question.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's done commonly with when it's put on the deed, and upon a tree, because you specify on the deed that there is an accessory unit on the property, and you can't do the transfer with the existence of that for another time.
Does that hold up in court? Has that been litigated?
So I'm speaking from very specific experience here in Maine, where I happen to be, where it is enforced routinely. I don't know, I'm not an attorney, so I can't comment, but.
Has it been enforced in Connecticut?
I have absolutely no idea.
So here's a potential exit strategy. If, I don't know if it is an exit strategy. Lynn, could we approve this subject to legal counsel's input on, because this is an issue that we seem fuzzy on, both in terms of both aspects of the first condition being that we cannot require it not be rented, and then to Art's alternative proposed condition, we don't know whether that can carry with the deed or not. Can we vote on this condition to input from Ira and Pete?
At first blush, I don't think what Art has proposed could be enforced, because the special permit would run with the land. And if you granted the special permit for a detached accessory dwelling unit, it would run with the land, that they would have that special permit as long as the property essentially didn't change.
Okay, that's a good point. What about Jack's condition?
Well, Jack's condition, I believe, is one of the.
Well, let me put it differently. We probably should get legal input on this one way or another. This whole, not specific to this application, but this whole issue.
Yes.
May I ask, like, what is the problem if they rent it out? What are we scared of? It's a barn, it's 2 bedrooms. It's not like you're gonna have 10 people in there.
But Claire, let me raise that issue, right? The reason I asked the specific question about the square footage, we have just created a 4,000 square foot house in a 1 acre in a single family zone, right? And, you know, in effect, if their next door neighbor called up and said that they wanted to do the same thing, you could have, with the value of properties, a daisy chain of that. And in fact, you've got a 4,000 square foot house with a separate septic system. I forget the exact number of baths, two bedrooms,
2.5 baths.
2.5 baths, a new septic system,
Yeah, 3-car garage.
a remarkable structure, which, you know, I could tell you sounds wonderful. So, you know, that's the problem you create when you allow, I mean, I'd be totally comfortable if what we had here was the family representing to us clearly that they don't intend to use it that way. I trust them. But you create a separate dwelling that sooner or later, the next proposal will be, well, why can't we just sell it?
Right. Oh, sell the accessory dwelling unit?
Mhm.
You'd have to subdivide the property, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But, you know, again, you've created a perfect structure to do that. And in fact, if you can't sell it, then, you know, why not just lease it? You know, again, my question goes to what our zoning is supposed to protect, right? You know, it's supposed to be single family zoning there. And we've created a totally separate dwelling structure, which I understand the use, and that's great, but you've created an easily separable, easily leasable property. And if I were all of the neighbors nearby and saw that that old barn got turned into a valuable property, I'd be saying, why can't I?
Yeah, but the problem is we have innumerable situations in town which have this exact situation with an accessory structure that's a legal dwelling unit on the property that people do rent. So on the flip side, if we were to condition this particular property, this applicant can turn and say, well, you didn't condition those 30 other applications that came before me.
And in
Well,
fact,
Dan, that actually argues my case, I believe.
We would be technically, John Chris, creating a detached 2-family dwelling, which is something we talked about at our subcommittee meeting, and the conclusion was that that's something that we may want to rethink.
Well, but this is Krista Nielsen. I think this is an unusual circumstance in which you have a historic barn that needs a higher and better use in order to stay relevant in 2020. To me, this is not a separate single family home on one lot. This is an accessory dwelling unit. Granted, it is a large accessory dwelling unit, but it's a large barn. I mean, if you want to preserve the barn, you got to do something with it.
Right.
And how is it any different from the application we approved last month?
Well, I was precisely going to go to that. Last month, we had one on Ponus Ridge. This month, we have this one. What will we have next month, right? And you'll see a progression of that. That may be desirable, but I mean, you know, that's precisely what you're going to see, right?
Well, something though we have been doing over the past few years, and it goes back to the point Mr. Rucci made, is the commission has been approving ADUs. And yes, there is a risk there, but on the other hand, part of it has been to enable, the original objective is to enable seniors, you know, to continue to live in a smaller unit as part of the, you know, the next generation's property or ever. You know, this has been something we have been doing for a while.
it is also something that was put forth in the POCD.
Right. Well, question for you, Lynn.
Yes.
And Claire's making a good point, is maybe we don't want to go ahead with the commission, the condition that Jack has proposed, which is it can't be rented out. But if we wanted to approve this subject to having a discussion with Pete Gelderman, can we do it that way?
I think we'd have to hold off on the vote to approve if we wanted to have a conversation with Pete.
Okay.
I will only add that I seconded the initial motion, but I am perfectly comfortable approving it without the condition. I think this is a broader discussion we need to have, however.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree with that. I think that we can approve it. I think it ought to be approved. Concerned about the renting, but that's a broader question. So I would withdraw the stipulation requirement.
Jack? Okay,
Yep.
okay. Any other discussion of the motion? Okay, I'll call the question. John Goodwin, I vote yes. June Guzlecki?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Dan Radman?
Yes.
Dick Ward?
Yes.
Claire Discornia?
Yes.
Jack Flynn?
Yes.
John Chris?
Yes.
Krista Nielsen?
Yes.
Arthur Cassavant?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, let's go into regular meeting. We are in regular meeting, sorry about that. Item number 4, 76 Elm Street, upon application of Heather Gaudio, authorized agent for JS Silverberg Realty LLC, owners for assigned site plan approval of section 63D2 to allow artwork that says hopeful made out of aluminum with onset light bulbs to illuminate the work. It will be placed on the backside of the building facing South Avenue of property in the retail A zone at 76 Elm Street. Lynn, how are we doing this?
She is here. I mean, I can go over it briefly if you'd like. I can also bring up the pictures and the Heather Gaudio.
Let me ask the commissioners the question. Commissioners, as you know, and there was a little bit of chatter from last month's meeting. Typically in a regular meeting session, we do not take public input, but I do have the ability to open it up to public input. What's your preference? Should we have Lynn present it or should we have Mrs. Gaudio present it?
I'm fine with Mrs. Gaudio presenting.
Gaudio, sorry. Jack, you're on mute. If you're.
I'm looking for it. I've lost the picture as well.
Yeah, I'd have her present it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mrs. Gaudio, why don't you tell us about the application? And if I'm mispronouncing your name, I apologize. I do it often. Ms. Gaudio?
I think we should have Lynn do it.
So much for that idea.
Wait, no, she's coming back. There she is.
I think wherever she is, she has a little bit of a connection problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Lynn, why don't you? No good deed goes unpunished. Yeah, we can't hear you. Lynn, why don't you present?
No trouble at all. I don't have a visual. Can you? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, like your connection's bad. Lynn, why don't you present the application if we get a better connection?
Is Lynn able to do it?
Pardon me?
Oh, that's my dog. Sorry.
Can you get somebody to get Gus? Okay.
Hold on one second. I'm gonna bring it out.
Okay, sorry, Lynn.
This is the sign, the hopeful sign that Heather Gaudio's gallery has proposed to put on the South Avenue exposure of the building. Their building has 2 frontages, so they would have the ability to put up 2 signs. But the sign, pursuant to our sign code or our sign regs in 6.3D, it doesn't meet the size and it doesn't meet the sign illuminations are prohibited. And this is fully illuminated. And so they've used 6.3D2, which allows them to come to the commission and, you know, seek your approval for a sign that doesn't comply with the regulations.
Lynn, is it a sign or is it a piece of artwork?
It's a piece of artwork.
Wait, can you say that again, Jean? I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Sign or a piece of artwork?
It's a work of art by Charlie Hewitt. who is a New York-based artist who splits his time between Maine and New York. There's actually one of these that's been posted in Greenwich outside of the Arts Council. And he's exhibited them in a number of other places as well.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, questions or discussion?
Ms. Gaudio, is there a way that you could place his artwork inside your window behind the glass?
So we did have a smaller version of the sign that was on display during the onset of COVID and during the whole, I mean, it was up there for 3 or 4 months. And the response that we had to that, we actually sold it, but the response that we had was so overwhelming and so emotional from the community. And Charlie offered to fabricate a larger piece, which we then installed on the interior. But it is intended also to be installed outside. And I think, you know, my thought was, especially given that we're not doing the holiday stroll this year, and we're looking down the face of what feels rather grim at the moment. I know there is a lot of hope, and that was kind of the message that I wanted to bring to the community. You know, I've been a small business owner for 10 years in town, and New Canaan has been very good to us, and so have the families and our clients. And I just, you know, we're not going to have the parades for the kids this year. We're not going to have outdoor gatherings. The restaurants may be closed. So my thought was, even if it was not a permanent installation, it's literally 2 screws in the building, and we have a light source there with the air conditioning unit. The landlords have improved, and it was, I think it was just my attempt to offer some cheer and some, I don't know, some spirit to what has been, you know, a trying time, I think, for everybody in so many different ways. So, you know, is it going to be a windfall of cash for the business? Is it going to make or break what we do? It's not. But it, you know, my thought was that it could be a nice gesture. And it's not difficult to install. It's not difficult to de-install. And the reason that I chose that height is that it's just high enough for the kids not to mess with it when they're loitering on that bench.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Is there any way we could have like a COVID moratorium on lighted signs in the downtown? I'm just trying to make it work.
Sure.
I mean, you could make it a condition that it's a temporary installment and, you know, needs to come down 30 days after the pandemic is declared over.
Oh yeah, good luck quantifying that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, could we do it through the end of January, or, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be whatever the town feels comfortable with. 90 days. Less than that, it might be more trouble than it's worth, but it gets us through Christmas and through, and maybe Inauguration Day.
You can't be so sure about that either.
Maybe.
Stop.
I'm so sorry.
You just sold the idea. You just sold the idea.
End of January sounds good.
Is this piece
Okay,
of art per se?
Commissioners, let's discuss whether we want to approve it and what conditions. I mean, what I will note is that it is coming under a sign application. It is coming under 63D2, which refers to the criteria around signs. The way I read the regulations is after that is when we specifically prohibit a neon sign. On the other hand, I think we could probably get away with, if you wanted a temporary approval. One of the questions I would also, I think one of the things we would have to specify or ask is, what are the hours it's going to be lit up? If you wanted to go in that direction.
Well, typically when I turn it on, I don't turn it off. It's just on. So, and I leave the gallery lit 24 hours a day. And I've never had anybody complain. So I know it's New Canaan, so I'm sure someone will at some point.
I would note, though, this is a sign application and we have a piece of artwork at an art gallery. It does seem a bit like advertising de facto, if not de jure. And so we have a business sign up that it says hopeful as opposed to something else. More of a distinction than a difference. Is in fact advertising for her business. It's right at her business.
I don't see it that way at all, Jacqueline. I see it as, I don't mean it as a play on words, although it is, I really don't mean it. It is hopeful. And if we ever needed a shot in the arm like that, now is the time. And to me, it's to a Merry Christmas. And, to get happy, pick yourself up. So I like it as a temporary measure. In January, I think it's fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
We do have an
Let's, do we have any other questions for the applicant? No.
You'd be okay with putting a timer on it?
Would I? Certainly.
Okay. And then my other comment is to the commission, if we approve this, even if it's conditional in terms of the timer and duration coming down in January or whenever, just be ready for the onslaught of other signage coming up / artwork from other businesses in town.
We already have it. They just haven't asked for permission yet. If you
They will.
go
It's going to be a busy meeting next month.
The golden arches are really artwork.
That's right.
To some people, I guess.
Okay, Lynn, let's mute the applicant and let's go into decision mode. Do I have a motion for approval or denial?
I motion that we approve it. I think it's temporary, it's hopeful, and it's positive, and I think that this time of year, if it was in March or April or August, I'd say no. But for right now, the Christmas season, the holiday season, I say yes. I think it's a good idea.
No, I would not say that, Jack. I wouldn't say because of the holiday season, because next year we're going to have a lot of people coming at us with neon signs saying Merry Christmas or whatever. I would definitely keep this strictly because of COVID and because of where we are right now, because we've been in this pandemic for months and we need to remain hopeful. And that's the only tiny reason we're approving a neon installation in downtown New Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make it very narrow because I think if we broaden it, like John said, like it's going to blow up on us.
Yep, I think that's fine. Very, very good recommendation. Yep.
Thank you.
So I need concrete conditions. So Claire, you're talking about a time period?
Yes, I would say no longer than 90 days. In light of the dire circumstances of COVID affecting the United States at this time, we've approved this for 90 days. That's it.
And would you have, as Dan put it, a timer on it?
Sure.
Dan, what do you think? What time do you want
Yeah.
it to be? Dan, 11?
Yeah, off at 11 and, back on at dusk or whenever, whenever they turn it on.
Okay. That would be fine.
Just to make sure
Lynn,
I'm understanding you.
Then,
She's not muted.
no offense to Mrs. Gaudio, but please mute Mrs. Gaudio. We're now trying to make a decision, okay?
Okay, I just have one question on what you guys just said for the timer. You want it off at 11 p.m.?
Yes.
And what's the time for on? Did you have a time?
4 p.m., Dan?
4 p.m. Yeah, we're in winter months.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your discussion. I just wanted to make sure I got it.
That's fine.
So it's not going to be on during the day.
I don't think it needs to be.
No.
Well, Claire
It should be
and Jack are working together on this. So
Yeah, I think well, my opinion is I think it can be on during the day. I don't see anything wrong with that.
I couldn't hear you.
I said, yes, I think putting it on during the day, and it's really arbitrary as to, what time you would do that if you choose to do that. And you could put it on at noon and then let it stay on until 11, noon till 11. Just a suggestion.
I just don't see the benefit of, we don't have any other signage in town that's illuminated during the day. You can argue that it's a piece of artwork, but there will be people in town that will argue it's a piece of signage. And, there's I don't see the benefit of it being on during daylight hours. So let it be illuminated during dusk and into the evening up until 11, and then we'll shut off. I think the more we leave it open, the more of a can of worms we're going to open up for future applications on this.
I agree.
So Jack, will you be okay with 4 to 11? Is that
Sure.
the idea?
Yep.
Dan, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, 90 days, timer, 4 to 11.
Because of COVID.
Right. And Jack, you're okay with that?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion of the motion? Okay. The only thing that I will say is a little uncomfortable, but I've said multiple times on other applications that these are extraordinary times, and as Claire and Jack have pointed out, this is simply about COVID and just this incredibly difficult time. So I'll call the question. I'll vote yes.
Do we have a second, John?
Pardon me?
Do we need a second?
I thought you seconded it.
Oh, I thought I made the motion.
No, Jack.
I made the motion, you second.
Okay, I second it. Sorry.
You
Excuse
okay with
me.
that?
Yes, I'm totally fine with that.
Okay, I vote yes. Mr. Grzelewski,
Yes.
Mr. Radman,
Yes.
Mr. Ward,
Yes.
Ms. Discornia,
Yes.
Mr. Flynn,
Yes.
Mr. Chris,
Oh,
Ms. Nielsen,
Yes.
Mr. Cassavant.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 8-1. Okay. Item number 5, Planning Subcommittee update. Krista?
So we did have a meeting this evening at 6 p.m. where we discussed two-family housing, and I made some recommendations, pointed out some issues, got some great feedback from the people that attended. And during the course of this meeting tonight, have listed down some other topics that we're going to have to talk about in the future, including rental of accessory dwelling units and also affordable housing. So, which were already on my list. It just kind of moves them up in the order that we talk about them.
Okay, thank you, Krista. Item 6, we don't have anything, right, Lynn?
We do not.
Okay. Item number 7, approval of minutes, September 29.
It should say October 27th.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Sorry.
Okay, October, what was the date?
October 27th, 2020.
October 27, 2020. Do I have a motion for approval or denial? Well, actually, I'm sorry. Do I have any input on the minutes? Okay, now do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
okay, great. I'll call the question. John Goodwin, I vote yes. Ms. Grislecki,
Yes.
Mr. Radman,
I wasn't present at that meeting.
okay. Mr. Ward,
Yes.
Ms. Discornia,
Yes.
Mr. Flynn,
Yes,
Mr. Chris,
Yes.
Ms. Nielsen,
Yes.
Mr. Cassavant.
Yes, subject to the fact that I was in and out a couple of times during that meeting because I was seated and unseated. I don't know whether that needs. to-
No, you can still vote.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, commissioners, thank you as always. Happy Thanksgiving and stay safe. Everybody take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Take care. Happy Thanksgiving.
Have a good night.
Night.
Lynn, let me know who made the motion to second the approval of the minutes.
Okay, Karen, I'm gonna go back and I at first I thought it was Dan, but I think it might have been Dick.
Okay,
But I'll double check. I'm gonna go back and watch the video tomorrow.
all right, not a problem. We'll get it done.
Okay, bye.
Bye.